Welcome back. So if you're here, I am sure that you love wild Mustangs. And I'm sure that you have a dream of someday adopting a wild Mustang of your own. And maybe you've even done some research, but when you get onto all the websites, you are quickly overwhelmed, frustrated, and confused. And it seems like just such a daunting task. So that is why after 6 years of training wild Mustangs, doing basically every different program they have to offer, from adopting directly from the off-range corrals, the internet adoption, competing in competitions all over the Pacific Northwest, and even going down to Lexington for the Mustang Classic, I am going to break this down into 3 super easy, simple steps so that you can get started on your journey adopting your very first wild Mustang. We're going to be talking about the 3 easy steps to adopt a Mustang from the off-range corrals. Now, there are so many different programs, and you can do all your research on those. But for today, we're going to be talking about the off-range corrals. So, what is the off-range corrals? So, the Bureau of Land Management does yearly gathers of the different Mustangs herds, and there's wild Mustang herds all over the Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, California, Nevada, and several other places. Because the lands are overpopulated, there's not enough food or water to keep these horses alive. The BLM will do yearly gathers, and they select some of the horses to stay and be adopted out to the public. So those horses, they bring into what they call the off-range corrals, which are basically these huge facilities where they can care and take care of these wild Mustangs, and then they can offer them up to the public, such as you and me, to adopt them, or they can be put into special events and training competitions. So the very first thing you're going to need to do is find an electronic device. So I've got my computer here today. You could also use your phone, and you need to look up the requirements to actually bring home a wild Mustang. Not everyone can bring home a wild Mustang. You have to have the proper facility. So the easiest way to do this is we're just going to type into our browser, how to adopt a wild Mustang. Now, the Bureau of Land Management's website can be a little bit tricky to navigate. There have so much different information that sometimes it's hard to find what you actually need. So I'm going to put the links to all my favorite sites down below, and so that you can just go directly to where you need to find the information. So I'm not going to click the very first header here. I'm going to go down to this how to adopt or purchase a wild horse or burro, because this is my favorite page that I find is the simplest to actually understand when you're just getting started. So we're going to come down here, and the very first thing it says is requirements. You need to ensure that you meet the standard requirements for adopting or purchasing a wild horse or burro. And so it directs you back to this page, which is like sales or programs, which I find to be super confusing. So we are not going to even look there. We're going to come down here to this sidebar over here, and we're going to scroll down till we see this little header right here, which is adoption requirements. And so we're going to click on that, because this is the page that you actually need. So minimum requirements to adopt a wild horse or burro. First off, you've got to be 18 years or older. So if you're younger than that, you need to go find your parents or your horse mom to sign off on your wild Mustang. They adopt an animal must stay in the United States for a year. So if you are in Germany or somewhere else, you do have to adopt a Mustang that's already been gentled for a year and is titled. And then the most important thing is you've got to have the facility that meets the required. So it needs to be, you've got to have a minimum of 400 square feet for your Mustang, and it has to be 6 foot tall for your wild Mustang. So that I like to use panels. You can use wood, no electric fencing. Mustangs do not know what hot rope is, and they will just blow right through it. So you've got to have hard, solid fencing such as pipe panels or wood. They say you can have 5 foot tall for yearlings. I've had yearlings that try and jump out. I'll be honest, I'm going to post a photo here. I do 6 foot for my yearlings and my full-size horses, and I've even had to extend my panels for some of my older Mustangs that have tried to escape. And these are, again, completely wild. Once they're gentle, you can treat them like normal horses. But when you get them from the corrals, they are terrified, big, wild. They will try and jump out of your pen. Burros, you could probably do 4.5. I've only trained 1 burro. It was an experience. I learned a lot of patience. And then you also need a shelter. And so for different areas in the US has different requirements. And so some places you just need like a roof, other places you need like 1 side, 2 sides, 3 sides. So do research for your area on here of what sort of shelter you need. And then you don't have to actually own the facility where you're going to keep your Mustang. And so maybe you have a barn close by that has a round pen in the proper facility. And so then you can rent that stall and you'd put that, and that would be considered approved for adopting your very first wild Mustang. So there are lots of different options. Even if you don't have the property for it, you can find a barn that meets these standards. You also have to provide a stock or horse trailer for being able to go pick up your wild Mustang. Again, you don't have to own this. You can borrow one, but it needs to be like a very solid herky trailer. You can't have any half doors. The doors need to be all the way to the top. The dividers need to be able to either be tied back or removed completely. And most of the time, I just remove my dividers out of the stock trailer completely because you need this big area because your Mustang is wild. And so they're just going to run it down a chute, close the door and say, good luck. And it's going to be like banging around in there. You want to make sure that it's like has good solid sides, good solid floor. Like they do on occasion kick and they will hit the sides and things like that. And you do not want your trailer coming apart with a wild Mustang inside. All right, step 2 is you need to find a BLM off-range facility near you. So if we go back to our how to adopt or purchase a wild Mustang page, it says find an event or location near you. And so there are lots of different off-site events, online corrals, and things like that. But for today, we want to go to the actual off-range facility and choose from one of the hundreds of horses that they have in holding. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to come over to our sidebar and we are going to click on this one that says off-range corrals. So we're going to click on that. Then it's going to bring you down, and there are there are very many different holding facilities. So we've got Arizona, we have California, Colorado, Idaho, Illinois, Kansas, Nebraska, Nevada, Oklahoma. But we're going to go to my favorite one, which is near me, which is the Oregon Wild Horse Corrals. And so I want to adopt from there. So I'm going to click on their page. And so then it just gives a little bit of information on that, about their facility, the layout of it. But I'm going to go all the way to the bottom of the page here. And that is where we go into step 3, which is where you need to make an appointment and fill out an application. And so again, at the bottom of this page here, it says, if you are interested in adopting a wild horse or burro, please visit the facility corral, stop by the office, or we're going to give them a call or an email. So over here is the contact information. I typically just will send them an email. And so you're just going to say your name. So I'd be like, hi, my name is Sierra Steffen. I would like to set up an appointment for adopting a wild Mustang. So then they would send me back a BLM application. Now that I will have to fill out and be approved before I can actually set my appointment. So if you kind of search around their website, you're going to find an example of an application. So I went back to the off-range corrals, scrolling down, and it says application to adopt or purchase. So we're going to take a quick look at this because there are some key things that you're going to want to look at before to be able to get approved. So it says here at the top, like, are you purchasing, adopting? For everything I've done, I've always done both. And then it's going to ask you, like, how many animals are you requesting? How many do you want? You're going to put in all your personal information. And then basically the most important thing is going to be down here at your corral. So you want your dimensions, your length, your width, your height of your corrals. Again, please look at the requirements. You need 6 foot tall, solid fencing and 400 square feet. So make sure that as you're filling out these information that it meets those criteria, or you're not going to get approved. Your gates also need to be 6 foot tall or have extensions on them. Shelter, make sure it meets the standards for your area. I can't stress that enough. So many people have gotten denied because they just didn't have that proper fencing. And electric fencing does not qualify for your wild Mustang. They don't know what it is. So also they ask like what kind of feed. So have a plan of like how much hay you're feeding them, what type, what kind. Are you going to be giving them a supplemental feed? The trailer, again, put the trailer you're going to be using to pick them up. So if your trailer doesn't meet the standards, find a friend that you can borrow and put that on the application. Again, dividers need to be tied back. Rear doors need to be full. And then it just asks some more questions. And then if you come down here, they want you to draw a layout of your shelters in your facility. Or you can put screenshots, GPS coordinates, all those fun things. But again, really, they don't care about your electric fencing that you have on your property. They don't care about whatever the 4 foot tall pen, or that your quarter horse is living in. They really want to know, where is your Mustang going to live? Does it meet the standards? And is this going to be a safe facility for your Mustang? And so those are what they're looking for in that area. And then it's just signatures. A couple different pens that I have done for my Mustangs. I've always used 6 foot tall pipe panels. The heavy duty ones are best. But I've used Shelter Logic shelters, which I'll put some photos down here. Those run only about like $300, and then I'll put plywood on the sides because I have to have 2 to 3 sides for where I'm located. I've also done Palouse. These shelters, they are amazing. They are like made out of like wood and really heavy duty pipe. I've loved those for the Mustangs because they're super tall. So even if my Mustang decides to do something crazy and rear up, they're not going to scrape their head on it or anything like that. I've also, one of my favorite wild Mustang pens is I've been able to set up a round pen in an indoor arena, and that was just amazing because it didn't matter what the weather was like, I could still work them. And so you can get creative. I've used sand for footing, I've used shavings, wood chips, gravel. I try, and if I'm adopting during the winter, I don't want them to be directly on dirt because I'm in the Pacific Northwest and it gets super muddy. So there's some things to think about as you're getting your facility ready. So you have looked at your requirements, you have found an off-range facility near you, and you have set up your appointment and filled out the application. You are all ready to go adopt your wild Mustang. So my next video will be what to expect at your appointment adopting your first wild Mustang. If you have any questions, I would love to answer them. Drop them in the comments below, and let's go adopt some wild Mustangs.